This is all about Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin, little b for the currency, and Bitcoin, big B for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Checking in on Bitcoin right now, the CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index is currently at $43,128 Bitcoin, making an advance of about 1% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
So Bitcoin bouncing up after dipping below $42,000 this morning, tracking losses in U.S. stock futures. The premium in the one-month Bitcoin futures listed on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange almost flipped to a discount, according to skewed data seen here. While the premium erosion represents weakening institutional participation, it may motivate non-directional traders anticipating a return of the premium to take a reverse cash and carry strategy. It's a market neutral position comprising a short position in the spot market against a long position in the futures. Traders took reverse cash and carry strategies after the March 2020 crash, when futures were trading at a discount of 4% and higher, thus locking in a 4% riskless return. Meanwhile, shares in Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, the largest digital asset manager in the world and a gauge for institutional investor activity, were trading at a record discount of about negative 25% to the net asset value. The premium flipped to a discount in February of 2021 and has steadily widened ever since due to several factors, including the launch of spot-based ETFs in Canada. Grayscale Investments is a sister company to CoinDesk. All right, joining me now to discuss BTC price and other Bitcoin news is our Week in Review panel. We've got CoinDesk Managing Editor of Technology, Christy Harkin in Toronto, and Managing Editor of Markets, Brad Cowan in Austin. Hello there, Brad and Christy. Happy Friday.
Hi, Christine. Happy Friday.
Welcome back.
Good to see you, Friday crew. All right, Brad, taking a look at the markets right now. There is a lot of volatility out there. We started the week with a nosedive, a short rally following Fed Chair Jerome Powell's confirmation hearing of the 7% inflation report. A dip this morning in now positive territory. What's going on?
You know, this has just been one of those weeks where it's just been kind of a grind in this market. We're kind of roughly where we were at this point last year, but it seems like we've traveled a lot of distance since then. We had a 6-day losing streak earlier that concluded earlier in the week. And as you say, we dipped below 40,000. Now we're back around 43,000. I mean, it just feels like a market that's kind of fighting for direction. Some people are saying it may have hit a new bottom. And so we might be going up from here. Although, a lot of analysts are also saying it appears like we're kind of stuck in the zone between 40,000 and 44,000.
There was an interesting article on oil versus Bitcoin by a commodities senior reporter at Bloomberg that you want to bring up. Tell me a bit about what we're seeing here.
Yeah, this was by our one of our newer reporters, Angelique Chen, and she just looked at a note that was put out by Mike McGlone, who's the Bloomberg intelligence analyst. And McGlone is known, he had the hot hand last year. He was kind of the first one to really prominent kind of Wall Street oriented analyst to predict that Bitcoin would go to $50,000. And of course, we did hit that last year. And so he won some credibility for that. He also predicted $100,000, which we have not yet. We're pretty far away from that. But his point was, just look at the supply and demand of commodities, and look at the supply and demand of Bitcoin. And, it kind of gets back to this idea that Bitcoin may have a winning hand versus a lot of other investment possibilities that you might choose, in terms of the supply and demand, just reminding us that, Bitcoin has this sort of fixed supply issuance curve. And, maybe what we're seeing in the price right now is there's not a ton of people aping into crypto all of a sudden. There's steady demand. But, it also has this technological story. anyway, it was a cool piece about just comparing Bitcoin with oil and copper, where you see prices go up and you see more supply. Bitcoin price goes up, supply stays the same. So it's very different from other commodities in that sense.
Well, we have been seeing a lot of interest in Bitcoin in countries like Turkey. A lot of Turks have been buying up Bitcoin amid the plunging lira there, according to a Wall Street Journal report. Also, Bill Miller came out this week saying, legendary investor, billionaire investor, of course, saying that he has 50% of his net worth in crypto. So we see that. But this news coming amid the Labor Department, or rather the latest report on inflation, up 7%, 4-decade high, but it wasn't as bad as expected. How do you think that is impacting price spread?
I mean, it is fascinating. I mean, Bitcoin over the past year and a half really has started to trade on these, economic reports. There's so many people who are now trading it as an inflation hedge that it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. This report this week, yes, we did have, the core inflation, excluding food and energy, accelerated. The headline inflation went to a 4-decade high. I guess there are probably some, there's always these whisper numbers in the market, what people really are worried about. And maybe people thought it would be a lot higher. And again, people always just jump to the next logical conclusion was, what does it mean for the Federal Reserve? And it didn't really change anything in terms of the Federal Reserve's plans.
Well, Powell had his hearing this week. Fed Chair Jerome Powell has been renominated for the position. He had his confirmation hearing before Congress. Any takeaways you had from
that? He pretty much stuck to the script, and in terms of monetary policy, it looks from all indications, it looks like they're going to wind up their asset purchases in March. They're probably going to do their first interest rate hike in March. They may have 3 or 4 interest rate hikes this year. That'll be the highest we've had in, interest rates in like 2 years. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens. But again, everything is sort of priced into the market now. There haven't really been too many surprises this week.
All right. Shifting over to another tech titan that has been grabbing headlines, Jack Dorsey, formerly CEO of Twitter, now CEO of Block, formerly Square. So, Christy, Jack has been proposing a nonprofit Bitcoin legal defense fund for developers on Twitter. We have one of his emails that was tweeted out. What is going on here?
So we've talked about this in the past, how there has been a bit of let's say, an attack on some of the Bitcoin core developers from our friend Craig Wright and his Tulip Trading Company and the law firm Ontier LLP, the firm that represents his Tulip Trading Company. It all kind of revolves around the whole claim that Craig Wright has that he says he's Satoshi and all of the things that accrue to him from that. And it's been a real thorn in the side of developers who just want to get on with the development of things. In fact, when one of the developers quit, Jonas Schnelly quit in October, he said his interests shift and you can't do much about it. But on top of that, he said, I feel that the legal risks for Bitcoin developers are increasing year by year, which can be stressful. And new contributors should probably join anonymously, which is tricky to do. And so those vague, a bit of a paraphrase, but essentially what he said in his tweet or when he quit. So what Dorsey is doing, along with Chain Code Labs co-founder Alex Morkos and academic Martin White, is they've put together this Bitcoin legal defense fund. And what they're going to do is run point on coordinating the defense against Craig Wright's Tulip Trading Company lawsuit, which is really hampering the developers really in relation to a breach of fiduciary duty with regards to the theft of crypto from the Mt. Gox hack. which is, again, something else I've talked about in the past. This is a lawsuit in which Craig Wright says that developers should somehow, don't know how, issue an unspecified form of code that will allow him to gain control of the funds in this infamous 1FX wallet. Now, this wallet has its own history. It was connected to the Mt. Gox hack. The money in it was money that was stolen from Mt. Gox. And Craig Wright says, hey, that's my wallet and I want the Bitcoin from it. And of course, the people who actually lost money in the Mt. Gox hack are going, okay, cool. If you get it, can we have our money back, please? That was stolen. Now, that is a weird thing, but also I don't know how, nobody knows how he expects the developers to somehow roll back time and give him back. That's not how blockchains work. And they'd have to fork it and then convince everybody that Craig Wright's new fork of Bitcoin is the real Bitcoin. And that's just not how things work. So, but it ties up the developers' time and money in order to have to defend against this. And that is one of the lawsuits that Dorsey's new group is going to be supporting the developers in their fight.
Well, I've been really impressed by Jack Dorsey's passion in the Bitcoin space and trying to identify the pain points and try to figure out ways to improve or alleviate those difficulties. Another one is I see that the block is going to build open source Bitcoin mining. What exactly does that mean?
Not the block. Let's be careful there. So Block, formerly Square, is looking at pain points that they can address to make mining more efficient, Bitcoin mining. So they're looking at performance and open source solutions and system integration ideas all together. This was first announced in October of last year, but now they've come out with some more details of things that they want to look at. So they're looking at availability, how to make mining rigs more accessible and affordable, which will help with decentralization and security of the network. How to make a better mining rig. Mining rigs are notoriously prone to breaking down. They get full of dust. They get overheated. So let's make them more durable and more, of course, energy efficient. That's a big concern about Bitcoin mining is how much energy it uses. So how can we make the rigs more efficient and less noisy? Because nobody wants to have a noisy machine in their home. And if we can create a situation where people can actually go back to the day of, maybe some home mining, some extra mining power distributed in areas that aren't concentrated into zones that are incredibly energy efficient and subsidized, and having, a big company have to own all the machinery. That's not great for decentralization. So he's looking at ways to improve that situation, and that can only be a good thing for Bitcoin.
Right. Jack has been very adamant about making sure that Web3 is decentralized. So it makes sense. And that tweet we just showed you was from Thomas Templeton, who is the Block's general manager for hardware, just making that announcement that they are looking to build a Bitcoin mining system that is open source. All right. Taking a look at the markets in the week ahead, Brad, what kind of short-term signals lay ahead? And I understand you mentioned to me earlier that there is another sign of a death cross looming. What does that mean?
Well, the death cross is, one of those technical chart patterns that people love to talk about because it just has that gruesome name. But this is when nothing more than when the 50-day moving price average crosses below the 200-day moving average. What it means is essentially that the prices recently have been falling relative to kind of a longer term uptrend, and people look to see maybe if that's a sign that the whole pattern, the whole paradigm is changing. The reality is the predictive ability of this particular indicator is limited. The results are mixed. But the last time this happened was in June of last year, and Bitcoin traded sideways for about a month. And then it took off towards the all-time high of, around 69,000. So, maybe that'll happen again. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll turn out to be something else.
Magic 8-ball.
Where's my crystal ball? All right. Well, in other exciting news to look forward to, the city of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil will invest 1% of their treasury into Bitcoin. So this is from Mayor Eduardo Paes saying that the city is also looking into allowing taxes to be paid in Bitcoin and offering its citizens a 10% discount incentive. Mayor Paes also cited Miami Mayor Francis Suarez as inspiration for this action, who in February also told CoinDesk that Miami could become the first city to place a portion of its treasury in Bitcoin. Christy, reaction to this?
I'm really curious to see what kind of adoption this actually has. It reminds me of a couple of years ago, two towns near where I live. In fact, I grew up in one of them, in Richmond Hill, Ontario, and another was Innisfil, Ontario. They actually collaborated. Yeah, Richmond Hill.
My hometown as well.
Your hometown too. They collaborated with, I believe it was Coinberry, to allow citizens to pay their property taxes in Bitcoin, which took a lot of people by surprise because they're like, huh? Is there a big demand for that up here? But apparently these were two of the first cities in Canada to adopt Bitcoin as a method of payment for property taxes. I'm curious as to whether or not anybody's actually taken them up on it. I know a few people have, but I can't imagine it's a whole lot. However, because they went through Coinberry actually automatically converted it to Canadian dollars right away. So the town was never dealing with Bitcoin, wasn't keeping Bitcoin on their balance book, none of that. So this is, I think, a slightly different situation where it seems like a way for the city to actually acquire some Bitcoin, but that wasn't totally made clear in the article that I saw. Brad, what did you think of it? Or sorry,
I like the way you pivoted from the Brazil question to turn it into a Canada story.
Hey, is what I
do. But that is the way I read it too. Christy, is that, if they get paid taxes in Bitcoin, they'll just keep the Bitcoin. I don't have the details.
What I got out from it was it just seems to be following, the stride of El Salvador as well, which is buying up Bitcoin, putting it in their reserves. And experts have long discussed, this could be a developing trend among many developing countries, that they may be looking for solutions, moving away from dollarization and toward Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation, as for various reasons. So to me, it just seems to be validating a lot of those experts that have been talking about this happening. So very interesting development. All right. Thank you very much, Christy and Brad. That was our CoinDesk Week in Review panel. Thank you so much for joining, guys. Have a great weekend. All right. That's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee, and we're off on Monday for Martin Luther King Day. We'll be back with All About Bitcoin on Tuesday at 3 o'clock Eastern. Also join me Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. in New York for First Mover, your first global look at the day's global crypto news headlines. You're watching CoinDesk TV.